Yeah, you kind of teed up a distinction that I do want to talk about between what is subjective and objective in menswear. So I do want to spend some time talking about that. But before we do, I want to return back to the point of view question. So I was rereading your essay this morning on how I think about proportion and silhouette. And you offer some ideas about how it is that you've developed your unique point of view as it concerns proportion with what you wear. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So quick recap on that. I still look at a lot of Esquire Man inspiration there. And when you look at these illustrations, and thank God they're illustrations so you can see the lines and everything, there's a lot there. There's a broad shoulder, there's a nipped waist, there's a very long leg line with a high waist. And the jackets, depending on the era, can be kind of long as well. And so for me, I've always had it in my mind. Obviously, collecting vintage, I could see it in action. The difference there, just for people to know, is that when you buy a vintage suit, obviously it wasn't made for you. They were still ready to wear, or to a degree made to order, made to measure back then. And so maybe you weren't the same size as the guy who previously owned it. But to an extent, it'll show you the quote correct proportions for that era. And that's something I've always kept in mind. I know proportions have changed over the years. 60s things got shorter, things got slimmer, 70s things got, more nipped, I should say, more flair to them. 80s, 90s got bigger, 2000s, or I guess the late 2000s got slimmer again, and now we're kind of widening out. So
can I pause you there real quick?
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by what you're saying here. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, although I don't know to what degree it's been constructive thinking, but maybe you can help me sort this out.
Sure.
I've been trying to understand what's the correct way to put this? I've been trying to understand the changes in proportion. Like there's certain stages in menswear at certain points in history where broader shoulders were preferred to more narrow shoulders, or wider pant legs were preferred to more slimmer pant legs. And I'm trying to understand what it is that goes into informing how those clothes are made at that particular point in time. Like, is there something going on interactively between kind of the culture and what we consider perhaps to be the ideal, I use that term very loosely, the ideal silhouette of a man? Or is this just merely human beings being creative and playing with different sizes? Like, I'm trying to understand the interaction between both the culture at the time and clothing that men were wearing at a particular time and how that relates to proportions. I don't know if this is making sense, but I'm trying my best to articulate it.
I get it. No, I mean, I've wanted the same thing too. I mean, the more I read, the more I see photos, it hopefully adds to this idea that maybe, like you said, humans might just be human beings and they're just creative. And at some point, a designer, a tailor, or whatever, their ideal becomes more mainstream and then people follow suit. I'm curious to see how it happens now because of how fractured everything is because of social media, where everything kind of has equal footing now. Like you can't say like there's a trend because another group might be having a different trend, and they're the same amount of people doing each one, and you would see it simultaneously in the news or in a fashion magazine or at Pity, for example, where opposed to back then, where if you didn't see it in the mainstream, it didn't technically like exist. It's like a baby with object permanence. It's like if you don't see it, it's not there. And so, but when you look at these old photographs, there was a lot of weird stuff going on in those. In all eras, I would say. Like, I mean, there's a photo, I think, and again, it sucks because I can't find them anymore. I saw them on Tumblr years ago, but there's like a guy wearing mixing like a 30s jacket, so very, pagoda shoulders, very, very sweeping quarters, and a short jacket with like crazy 40s pants, Hollywood waist, really pleated and everything, really baggy. And so people still mixed eras back then too. The guy probably in my head canon of it, it's like maybe it was his dad's or something, and he's just wearing it, and you see that a lot. And one Esquire Man art piece in general, which I do have, there's even a section on collegiate style, and we talked about Ivy and everything, but even before that, like there was a photo or an illustration of a guy wearing tapered trousers, and they actually like drew it so actually like it comes in and it's cropped and it looks like a 60s trouser, and it's like, oh yeah, this young man's wearing a new style. And it's crazy that in like 1938 there's like this slim trouser, and then the next page you see like the classic like Lawrence Fellows illustration with like the wider leg or so. And so I don't know. I think maybe this is a little bit of not counterculture, but like youth culture. People always want to be different from what their dads looked like, and
Mm.
creatives go across all generations. That's how music kind of goes, right? Rock and roll, jazz, it all kind of evolves from something else and it changes or it goes back, and it's tough to pinpoint exactly why, but proportions, I think, have all, at least looking back, have always been an additional mode where you can alter and change to whatever your creative expression is. I feel like, I'm glad that nowadays people are talking about, the quote, personal ideal versus the capital I ideal, because again, if you look through it now, there is just so much variety that you can't say that the 30s was better, because the 60s has a lot of great style too, with Ivy and Cary Grant, Fred Astaire, they have all changed their style. Jimmy Stewart has a different style through the eras also. So even these guys that we hold up, to these menswear icon status, they've all had, style, not transformations, but a style evolution that goes in accordance with the eras of that time. Like when Jimmy Stewart was really old, I saw a documentary with about John Ford by Peter Bogdanovich, R.I.P. He's like, giving this interview and he's wearing like a different shirt that he would wear in the 30s. It's more of like a 70s shirt, which presumably he got a decade before, because I think it's like an 80s interview or whatever. But it's all different, and so the proportions were always kind of just personal expression. And even these guys, they could be, okay, I like that. There's a like involved there that kind of, to go back to what you're probably going to talk about now, that kind of transcends the objective and it becomes subjective to them. And so proportions, I believe, is still in that way, despite me being very specific about what my personal proportions is and what I think looks the best on someone. But I do, again, as you said, I have that caveat because I don't want it to be too authoritarian. I think that everyone can play with whatever they want, but I just want to explain what my point of view is, because I feel like I haven't seen it yet. And it's a personal blog too. So it's, your mileage may vary, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but explain that a little bit out. So what is your personal point of view on proportions?
I think
for those who haven't read your blog.
Right. Yeah. I would say, it's in very broad strokes, it's very similar to the Esquire man. I would say now it's a little bit softer in the shoulder. I still like it to be a little bit more extended. I like it to be a little bit of waist suppression, but I love a big draped chest. I love a high-waisted trouser that, if I'm being nitty-gritty now, will meet at least roughly close to the buttoning point of the jacket. I love a wider
second
leg.
button, right?
The second button, yeah, exactly. Yeah, if it's a 3-roll 2, it would be the middle one. I don't own any 2-button jackets anymore, so those are all gone. But yeah, so it meets there because there's like a little bit of proportional harmony, as I call it in that essay. I like a higher rise, which echoes roughly, again, the rise is equal to the buttoning point to the bottom front quarter of the jacket. That's something that I definitely think is harmonious. I like a wider leg. That one's a little bit more open to interpretation, since there's, depending on your stature and the literal circumference of your legs, wide could be different to a lot of people. There's always a story where my friend Raj, who was a shorter guy and a very skinny guy, he had a 7-inch leg opening, but it was so wide on him. And I thought, oh, it would look like that if I got a 7-inch leg opening. That doesn't work like that. And I had very skinny pants. And I'm like, why does it look like Raj? I'm like, okay, I have to, proportionally make it wider to my proportion, to my leg measurements. And so, in general, I like a wider leg. I like a little bit of drape to it. I want the legs to go straight down without too much taper. And I like it to end right where it touches the shoe, because I don't want it to break. And so the whole thing is about very clean lines, very long legs. It's very clean to me, and I'm always in pursuit of that ideal across all of my garments. My chore coats from Drake's, I buy a little bit oversized to evoke the feelings of a sport coat. I want it to be roughly the same length as a sport coat, because I interchange those ideas or those garments in my head when I'm making outfits all the time. And it's easier when they're roughly the same. The only difference is like the pockets, the collar, the material, the lapel and everything. Same thing with pants. I have a lot of military chinos that are very wide, that are cut like my trousers, or you could see my trousers are cut like military chinos. My jeans, I like a little bit of a slimmer jean just because it's a little bit different. I don't want it to be like, dungarees or anything, but there is still this idea that my jeans are a little bit wider than what most guys would typically wear. And so there's a lot of this proportional harmony across all of my garments. And of course, there's a lot of proportional harmony to themselves too, where, again, like a higher rise, I would feel like looks better with a wider leg, just because I feel like if it's high waisted but slim, it looks odd to me. I don't know. There's a little bit of like weird lines going on there. And so maybe that is what it's like. It's a lot like straight lines, like going up the leg, going out to the body, going down from the shoulder, that's kind of my purview with proportions. It doesn't have to be accepted by everybody, which it almost certainly is not accepted by everybody. But it's something that I hold very dear to me. And I feel like it's been, despite how authoritarian it might sound, it's been very freeing. Like I still own a lot of clothes with that purview. You would think it's restrictive, but it's not. Like racks all behind me. So does that help answer the proportion thing? I hope the people listening kind of get it. If you're not, you have to read the essay or listen to the podcast because it's very nitty gritty. There's a lot of words in that essay.
I believe it does, but I would like to know a little bit more specifically about what you have to do to cultivate that style. So do you usually do made to measure? Like where do you get your garments so that you dress within the realm of that aesthetic?
I think on paper, it sounds like everything has to be bespoke, but even in that photo of me where I use the ideal, where I'm wearing a brown jacket with like these kind of elephant gray trousers, those are all ready to wear. Like the brown jacket is ring jacket. I personally think that they have the best ready to wear that I've ever tried on. That looks really good on anybody who. I don't have a lot of friends who are my size, but when they put it on, I'm like, see, look at this. This is what you should look like.
I absolutely love that jacket. It's so. I don't know how to correctly describe it, but it has a kind of beefiness about it, if you will.
Yeah, it does.
But it's also doesn't look oversized. I'm like, I was looking at that jacket. I was like, damn, where'd he get that thing? I thought you would have had to have it made to measure. What do they do with the shoulders? Like, what is that in particular called? Because they look nice and beefy, but not oversized. They don't look roped.
I would say it's a little bit Neapolitan styled, where there's a little bit of like that the big sleeve head going into the shoulder seam, and the spalla camicia and everything like that, which technically refers to like the pleating everything. But I think they do have a little bit excess sleeve there to kind of give it again that beefiness. I think I'm not sure exactly if the ones that I have are
extended
fully
shoulder. Is that what it's call that?
Yeah, it's extended. I mean, it could also be one of the things about extended shoulders is that it's hard when it's ready to wear to know if your shoulders are just too small for the jacket or it's supposed to be that way. I think even with t-shirts, I think nowadays t-shirts are a little bit easier to kind of see. Sometimes they go really far over, like the whole 90s trend coming back and everything. But with sport coats, it's a little bit harder to be like, maybe I just have smaller shoulders for my size. And like it fits my chest, it fits my length and everything, but maybe I just have a smaller shoulder. Either way, it just has that elongating effect and it doesn't droop too much. I think that I don't know if the shoulder has canvassing in it, like if the canvas goes fully through the chest over into the shoulder or not. It's soft, meaning that there's no padding, but there could still be something kind of in there to give it this kind of soft structure, I should say. It's not structure that's being built up, but this kind of just conforming attitude where it just feels soft and it kind of just rolls over like that, which I think you can see in those pictures where it's extended, but it kind of just rolls so gently that builds it up. And it helps that the cloth it's their balloon fabric, which is their kind of like, it's not a hop sack, but it's like their open weave, but it's kind of spongy. It doesn't wrinkle very much. And it has a lot of drape to it. So that all contributes to this draped garment, which looks so cozy. It's my favorite jacket. I love that thing. It's this dark brown with like even a black plaid on top of it. And it's the perfect ideal of what it is, and it just proportionally, it has everything that I want it to do. And it just makes me feel so built up, but soft at the same time. And that's something with my proportions that I really like. And it's crazy that I got it ready to wear. And the pants are also, they're vintage, but it is ready to wear. And because I think it's because I've been trained to, buy vintage, whether it's old 40s clothing, like it was there, or like vintage Ralph Lauren, I'm able to kind of know what I can get away with and what to see from a garment immediately. Like, okay, that's going to be high waisted enough for me, versus that's a Ralph Lauren that's going to be too low in the rise, because Ralph Lauren has had a lot of different stuff over the years in different proportions as well. And obviously the eBay listing should have listings of the measurements that can help too. But yeah, I'm just very conscious of all those measurements and the visuals of what it looks like. And I'm just been so lucky that I've been able to find it ready to wear, or vintage. And if I were to get something more bespoke or made to measure, I'm able to kind of communicate what I like to that guy. So when I have like my cotton suits, for example, that are custom made for me by my friend Dave at Atelier Fugue, they roughly evoke the same ideas. And so again, there's that consistency there. But I definitely think you can get it either made to measure, or ready to wear. The ready to wear thing is a game of finding it and then trying it on and making sure it fits. The made to measure one is hoping that their fit algorithm is able to work with what you want it to be. And I don't do made to measure a lot for that reason, because you can fudge up the numbers. Like when I was younger, I did Indochino, and I fudged up like the U rise measurement, which is like where your belly, well, technically your belly button would meet, and it would go down under the crotch and go behind you and meet, the back part of the lower part of your back. So it would be a U, which would be the rise of your trouser, the full rise. And I maxed that out. I remember getting an email from Indochino saying, "I'm not sure if you measured this correctly." And I go, "No, I did. Please try it." They go, "Okay, whatever." And and back then it worked for whatever I wanted to do, but it's just so much of a headache. So that's why I don't do a lot of made to measure. And again, in theory, you can do it, which is what I do with Dave at Atelier Fugue, and it helps to work with a human being with this stuff. But it's out there if you do some ready to wear. You just have to like kind of find it, and some people don't want to deal with that, which I totally understand. I'm trying to move into the whole made to measure realm more now, to be more specific and to make more cloth in what I like. Because again, a lot of vintage can be heavier because it's older. It's also what lasts. And I want summer weight travel. I live in LA. You know what I'm talking about. You want to wear something that's more comfortable. And so it's like a little demon I have to deal with moving forward. But I'm all looking. I'm sure everyone, if you guys are following me, you'll see the progress in my made to measure journey as I get older. And we'll see if I can still get these proportions without too much alteration work at the end product.